person, or that's a good way to think about it. Lived for many years in Wagga, so it's wonderful to see the fostering of local talent. So I'll hand over to you.
Thanks. So my name's Rosemary, and I'm also from the ANU. I've just started honours this year, the task of honours, and this was part of my undergrad body of work. And I guess the inspiration from it really came from my time in Wagga. I grew up here, and in our garden my mum had this sculpture that was ceramic rocks that were hollow and stood on a stake, and it was kind of overgrown and neglected a bit, but I always thought it looked like the figure, and I was always amazed at kind of that relationship between the rocks and the figurative body. And so when I went to uni, I guess kept playing with that idea and looking at the way that aspects of our body and aspects of nature or landscape can kind of lock together. And so I started kind of mapping and recording all these elements. I would attach strings to trees and take the drawings, and they always looked like veins or skin texture. When I draw the figure, I always begin by breaking it into circular sections. And I was looking at artists like Susie Peck and Gab Bassetto, who use the body in kind of abstracted ways and parts that meet together. And so I guess that's sort of where it took off. And so then I went into the hot shop and blew these forms that, when connected together, could evoke a figurative form in some ways, but also very that rock-like in that way. So these were sort of the beginning of that exploration, and from this point they've expanded as I've extended my skills to be larger and much more figurative. And so this year these are obviously smaller, and this year I'm trying to begin to make them to match the circular sections of my body and the way that those shapes can relate together. And I've always incorporated both paper and glass together. I think that they have very similar qualities in many ways. They can be both precious and disposable, and they can be hard and soft and translucent, opaque. All those kind of similarities that you can find in glass can also be found in paper. And it just allows me to explore the same themes on a two-dimensional format. So when I stacked these up, I loved the shadows that came through them, so I painted those. And I think that I've been pleasantly surprised by the lighting of this work and the way that there's another shadow, and that kind of enhances the shape and the forms of those pieces. When I make them, I don't really go into the hot shop I have an idea of the way that I want the piece to sit, but I don't have the exact forms mapped out. So I try to be led by the medium a lot. So the pieces have chill marks on them from the process and tool marks, and I'm guided by that, and I love that being in the work. And when I make all these pieces, I then get them out and play with them and work out how they can sit together and be arranged. I think that's kind of, where these pieces come from. If there's any questions?
How long does it take for you to tool them? How much time have you got before it becomes set?
Sorry, say that again.
When it's out, it's molten, and
Yep.
and then you blow it. So you've got a certain time limit before it sets.
Before it's hard.
What's the time frame?
So the process of blowing, because glass is quite a poor conductor of heat, you have to keep heating it up. So once you gather from the furnace and are using the glory hole, you have a minute or so before it becomes unmovable in that solid state. So it's a process of reheating it and then moving it and reheating it and then going into the annealer to cool it down to room temperature. So it's quite a repetitive process, but I blow these into open forms, and then I use they're like cork pads and shape them and mould them, and sometimes then I've blown them back out to a form and then gone back in again, and just to find a shape that has those curves and those crevices like the body does, but also will work in that kind of stone, rocky sense as well. Yeah.
It's just kind of an observation, I guess, Rose, but it was really nice hearing you talk about paper as also can be hard and soft, but I think your painting of the shadows underneath the glass and the paper actually having that curve to it, it's a really beautiful combination with the curves of the glass, like that natural wrinkling, I guess, that happens having pages of paper.
Yeah, and I think it sort of adds to a sense of weight in the piece also. It kind of feels like it's pressing down in the paper. And there's also that kind of juxtaposition with what these glass stones are and what real stones are like. These are very light, whereas stones can be quite heavy, and I guess alludes to that relationship as well.
It's a nice irony to the fact that stones are permanent, like quite permanent, live through a long period of time, but the flesh is soft and undulating and so impermanent. And one of the things that interests me is that idea of a shadow. You can only have a shadow from something that exists. A shadow can't exist otherwise. And it's sort of a nice, I'm trying to get my head around the irony there of having a shadow for something that seems not to be very permanent, but in the shape of something that is permanent. There's quite a few layers of information happening there. I wonder how you could play that out.
Yeah.
Or,
I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point.
So where do you see the work going from here? Other ideas?
Well, my practice has always included both blown and cast work. So the other element of my third year was taking cast glass skins from my body that were paper thin and arranging those in abstracted ways too. So I'm still trying to work out how I'm kind of pulled. I'm always being pulled between the the kiln forming or the blown works. But like I said, I think that because I've am so involved with the work, and to me it's very bodily, and I think that some of the feedback that I get is that it needs to be more bodily. If that's where so I think that's where I'm pushing it at this stage, is how can I still incorporate the themes that I'm wanting to, but have it more evocative of the human form. And one of those ways is scale, and working with the landscape and bodyscape in the way that the silhouette of a form can undulate and move. That's sort of where I'm heading, I think. Yeah.
Is it so important that you blow these works yourself?
I think that while I'm at art school, it is. I think the other piece that I did, which was quite big, I had a gaffer make one of the forms, which was about this big, and I then made the smaller form. So I still want to have a heavy involvement in it, but I think that yes, that if there's a point when it requires greater than my strength and ability, I'd be happy to.
But at the moment, the personal touch is teaching you a lot, eh?
Yeah, and I think that, that's right. And while I've been at art school, it's been about using my skills and how can my specific skills translate.
And understanding the process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think definitely if I'm taking it to a figurative scale, there'll come a point where I may not be able to live to that. Yeah.
Yes, there are good glass bottles around.
Yeah, there are, definitely.